The Panthers don't have a lot to excite, but the one player that I'm very intrigued to see. Funny enough, this is my second game watching the Dolphins this year, and this is my second game watching the Panthers this year because when the Dolphins were playing the Broncos,
Oh, that's
I was
right.
over in Seattle watching the Seahawks play the Panthers, but this is the first time that I'm getting to watch Bryce Young. So before we break down how Bryce Young has played so far this year, what's your opinion on Bryce Young, how he's played so far, and then how you think he's going to end up as a quarterback?
So I did, as I typically do, I watched a few of their games on NFL Plus, and he hasn't looked necessarily bad, but he looks like a rookie. Like it's just as plain and simple as that. He's not processing as fast as he was in college. Obviously, defenses are a lot different in the NFL. Um, you know, the ball placement is still there. He's still very accurate. Still has decent mobility, even with that. Was it an ankle injury that he had?
Something like
Uh,
that.
yeah. So he's not playing bad, but he's not necessarily playing good either. And behind that terrible offensive line and lack of a run game, there's not really too much more you can ask from him. So yeah, it is what it is with him, kind of thing. Like you don't know what he's gonna be until he actually is it.
Yeah, with especially guys that are more known as pocket passers. Now, the way of the true pocket passer is completely gone. Like even guys TUA, Bryce Young have some mobility to them, but they are known for being the point guards who sit back there and get the ball to their offense. Anthony Richardson is going to have a much easier time, even though he keeps getting beat up. He's going to have a much easier time. Justin Fields is going to have a much easier time. Lamar Jackson is going to have a much easier time those first few years in the NFL because while they can't read defenses that well, while maybe they don't have the skill position players to get the ball to quite yet, they have the ability to make plays on their own and ride that out until the rest develops. Jalen Hurts, like he was, bottom five in terms of completion percentage, had a bunch of turnovers, and then just started running around until he figured out how to pass the ball. He eventually got A.J. Brown, got Devonta Smith, Dallas Goedert emerged over Zach Ertz as Zach Ertz departed, and now they have a solid offense around him, and he can sit back there in the pocket and deliver the ball while still having that full assortment of being able to run the ball. You don't get that with Bryce Young. So Bryce Young, it's eventually you believe in Bryce Young. I believe that Bryce Young is eventually going to come around. I mean, you look at his stats right now, 64% completion percentage for a rookie, not bad at all. 750 yards, 5.2 yards completion, 5 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, 12 sacks. With that last part there, it tells me the 5 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, 12 sacks is the offensive line in front of him isn't that good. And I mean, you don't have to be a pro NFL scout to be able to tell that offensive line is not good. And then B, the receivers he's throwing to is not that good either. Adam Thielen's having a fantastic season, better than anybody expected him to. Almost 400 yards, 3 touchdowns. But then you go to DJ Chark at 170. You go to Terrence Marshall at 114. So he doesn't have the supporting cast around him, but I still do very much believe in him. If he eventually gets that, he can be a top caliber quarterback in this league.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I mean, it's basically almost Tua and Mac Jones situation. I know, funny enough, I said that. I know you want to get to that in a little bit, but
No, we're right
YouTube
here. We're in it.
streaming. Yes, sir. But yeah, I like it's kind of like their situations. Like if you think about it, Tua was heavily criticized, like he can't be an NFL quarterback, blah 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 blah. And he needs all these weapons, he needs a defense, yada yada. And then you go to Mac Jones and he gets carried by their defense into the playoffs his first year, makes it to a Pro Bowl, and then after that it's just complete and utter garbage from him since. And now everybody's calling for his head, Bill Belichick's head, saying start Zappy over him. And I don't necessarily think, Zappy's going to be any better. I think he's pretty much like a carbon copy of him. Literally, they even look like brothers.
Might as well be.
Yeah, so it's not necessarily that. I mean, he's basically dealing with what Tua had in his rookie year, which we know wasn't that good. Like literally Devontae Parker, who's now older and more hurt than he was in 2019 or 2020. Mike Gesicki, who is not doing anything for that offense at
Sucks.
all because they're trying to have him block, which he's not a blocking tight end. He's
No.
basically a poor man's Darren Waller.
Very poor man's.
Very poor man's. I mean, bro, how many times did Darren Waller line up in the slot or outside last year, or not last year, last game, like against the Dolphins? I was literally like, bro, why are they not lining him up, having him chip and then go? Like he was literally lining up against corners the entire time, like he was a receiver.
Yeah, it was
Like
working. But
that was
if you
insane.
put Darren Waller on the Panthers, outside of I guess how Adam Thielen's playing, he probably is their best receiving option. And like if you look in the backfield behind Bryce Young, he's not getting anything from his running backs. Miles Sanders 190 yards, 1 touchdown. Chuba Hubbard 154, no touchdowns, one singular rushing touchdown all year long. That actually came when I was watching the Carolina Panthers play the Seattle Seahawks over in Seattle. So I like Bryce Young. I think he is again capable of being a good quarterback. So I guess that does pose the question: do you see him as more Mac Jones, or do you see him more as Tua?
So I'm gonna give a very political answer, and it's going to be, look, right now he's closer to Mac Jones than he is Tua. However, I think, with his skill set, the slight more mobility that he has than Tua, he still has the accuracy very close to Tua. He could potentially be as good, if not better than Tua, and that's coming from the Dolphins fan. That's coming from Tua non country over here. I love Tua. I'll
We do.
praise him, to the best of my ability. But yeah, I think Bryce Young, his game is very, very similar to Tua, with a slightly bigger arm, slightly more mobility, not as accurate, but very close in accuracy, like Tua. You know how they say, like, oh, Tua can hit the keyhole, well, he can hit the doorknob.
Yeah,
So,
I agree with the assessment that I would compare him more to Tua. Now, definitely the first thing that comes to mind is stature. Him and Bryce Young, it's a competition to the bottom as to who's the smallest quarterback in the NFL. But when you look at both height and weight, he is the smallest quarterback in the NFL. But more than just the football sense, you can get a real sense of whether someone's going to last in the NFL when they're struggling, as to how their team treats them, how the coaching staff looks at them, how the players look at them. I don't know the system to which captains are voted for in Carolina, but as a rookie quarterback, he was voted as one of the captains. He's from things I've heard that he's been a good leader in that locker room. That he's been acclimated as one of the guys. Whereas we keep hearing a new story every single week about how Mac Jones gave a cheap shot to this guy, and how now the offensive line is like getting after him, like, hey, like we're the ones that are trying to protect you and taking a beating every single play. So Mac Jones isn't having any favor in that locker room or in the NFL, in the coaching staff. Bryce Young has that. As far as I can tell, he's a likable guy. He shows up to work, and he's doing the best that he can. He has a lot of excuses right now, and they're fair excuses. They're excuses that are allowed. It also helps him that he's not playing for the New York Giants. He's not playing for the 49ers. He's not playing for the Cowboys. He's playing for the Carolina Panthers. This is a team that now they do have a very aggressive owner, and an owner that is serious about winning. However, the fans aren't going to be there's going to be no Tua non. There's going to be no Bryce Anon when it comes to, is Bryce Young the guy, is he or is he not? There's no pressure on him today to be the guy. It's a division that has historically been very bad, that there's no clear-cut team right now that you believe in. None of those four teams are probably getting out of the first round of the playoffs because one of them has to get there. So he has the time to sit back and develop, let the team build a proper team around him, and eventually come forward as the guy. Now, for this week, he's not going to be the guy. I don't think he's going to have a good time. I do expect their rushing attack to maybe have a little better game. Miles Sanders has been dealing with the injury of the last few weeks, and he's going to be more healthy than he has been in recent times. But how do you think he's going to fare against this Miami Dolphins defensive front?
Miles Sanders, Chuba Hubbard, I I guess they're just gonna have like an average day. Like that would be my guess. You know, there was no Saquon, but there were still holes being opened against our defensive line with their terrible offensive line of the Giants. So it's kind of like, like I haven't really seen that much improvement. Now, I did see improvement from the linebackers actually being able to get to the holes. Tackling still kind of suspect, so we'll see in that regard. But I think it's going to be a very average day for their running backs. I think they're going to probably have 100 total rushing between the two, probably 75 from Sanders. Um, Maybe even a touchdown if they run it all the way down there, but we'll see. I really with this defense, until I see something so dominant that like it can't be unseen, I'm just gonna go with what my gut's telling me and what my eyes are telling me.
Okay, so now to the question I asked: How's Bryce Young going to look against this defense?
Oh, I thought you were saying
No.
the running backs. Like you literally were talking about the running backs and then asked about. I was like, "Why are you smirking this whole time?"
Yeah.
Because you also kind of froze a little bit for me.
Okay. Yeah. How do you
when
think
you're
Bryce
asking.
Young? How's Bryce Young going to look against our defense?
I average. The same thing as the running backs. I think he's going to look average. I mean, I think he's going to make some plays because once again, this defense has holes sometimes, and like they'll have some broken coverages. There's going to be some areas in zone that they're able to get to. Uh, do I think that they're going to just go out there and light it up against us like the Bills did? Absolutely not. I think they have an average offense, and that's exactly what it's going to look like with a terrible offensive line. I do expect him to get sacked 3 or 4 times, especially with Phillips more than likely being back and Andrew Van Ginkel being unleashed by our defensive coordinator Vic Fangio. So yeah, I could definitely see him getting sacked 3 or 4 times. Other than that, having just a regular day, probably 250 passing. I don't think he's going to throw a touchdown, but we'll see.